Dear Michael, dear colleagues and friends, we are very happy today for our Geopolitical Tuesday to have as a guest Michael Benhamou. Michael will speak about or will compare the Polish army to European peers. So, Michael, shortly you have a presentation that was sent to our guest. You are executive director of the OPEWI. So I would like you to explain a little bit what is that Europe's War Institute, what are your activities, and you are also research associate at Martin Center. Formerly, you were political advisor deployed to NATO and EU field operation in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Libya, and the GCC within land, air, or naval headquarters. I believe that maybe your career in that field began in Kosovo. Maybe you could come back as well on those peaks before we will touch your question. The question of your talk is very important for all of us because more and more people are considering that the possibility of a war in Europe, of a war within the EU, is not to exclude. Poland would be there in NATO on the first range. Out of NATO, we already have this war in Ukraine, as everybody knows, and not only in Ukraine. And because you have different frozen conflicts. And the question is, as NATO is a very decentralized organization, on the east flank, we have two larger states, Poland and Romania, and a lot of very small states. And you have other European and American powers having their some military presence. So our question is, can we believe in the Polish army? Can we consider we have a modernized army? Is it comparable to what we have in Ukraine? Is it comparable to what we have in France, in the UK? Is it better, worse? Or does it have any sense to ask this question that way? Maybe we should ask it differently. The floor is yours.
Many thanks, Nicolas. The good news is I think I have answers to all your questions in the presentation. And so I will very soon start this and use the slides. But perhaps before we go on these slides, I want to say thank you for inviting me. I want to say that you're right. My career started 15 years ago. So I've been in this business of defense and security for 15 years. You might even say 20 years if you add my university years when I was in Sorbonne and Sciences Po. And so it's been quite a long time. And so many things, of course, have changed in the last 20 years. But we'll discuss it in the presentation. I want to say to the crowd that they should interrupt me when they want. They can raise their hands. They can also ask questions on the side. I will try to look for it. So they should not hesitate to interrupt me. This presentation is quite bold, because it's a French ex-French military discussing the Polish military. And obviously, there are many things I do not know about the Polish army, and I will probably make some mistakes. So do not hesitate to correct me. So here we are. I will now share this. I hope it's the right PowerPoint presentation.
Maybe before your presentation, could you say a few words about your European Wars Institute?
Oh, it's planned. It is planned. That is also in the cause. Yeah. No, don't worry about this. I am a marketer at heart. Can you tell me if you see the slides? Slide number 2. Why this think tank?
I think I see only the slide number 1 personally.
So you don't see slide number 2. Why this think tank? Not yet.
Not yet.
No. It's always a bit annoying. Okay, let me go back. Okay. Do you see slide
Yes.
number 2 on its own? Yeah, fully. You see it fully. Okay.
Yes, and we see even the frame around.
This is a problem. It's not clean. It should not be like that. Okay, so let me try to improve this again.
Maybe F5.
F5. Okay, I think the only way is let's try again. Okay. Sorry about this. I don't understand what is going on. Okay, now it should work. Yeah. Okay, so so do you see the slide number 2 now? Why this think tank?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, OPY was born out of a sense of emergency, Nicolas, because we feel that Europeans need to think about defense together, and we need to have a tactical discussion between Europeans about the future of warfare, the threats around us, and how we can solve them. Why? Because, and we're going to talk about this, America is slowly leaving Europe, and for many reasons. And at the same time, we have threats in the south and threats in the east. And so OPY is there to influence policymakers, to foster industrial cooperation. And also we want to encourage citizens, European citizens, to think defense, notably via a donation platform. This is why OPY is here. We do events, conferences, forums, papers, studies, and also consulting on the side. We also do field trips. We're going to Ukraine every 3-4 months. Our team goes to Kyiv for a couple of weeks. So this is about mobility. This is about being as close to the field as possible and defending European interests. As for me, I think you discussed who I am quite extensively. Of note, if you want to follow OPY or myself, you can follow me on LinkedIn, especially. Not really on Twitter, because I don't really go there anymore. I think you've done the rest, Nicolas. So now to start on the slides. So I just have, I think, 5 or 6 slides, but we'll spend some time on each. It's very interesting to look at a topographic map of Europe and see where Poland is in that map. Because Poland, let's be honest, is exposed geographically. It is exposed historically because it has Germany in its west, it has Russia in the east, and it has an open Baltics coast. What does it mean, open coast? It means that there is no mountain to defend that coast. For example, in the Mediterranean, 80% of the Mediterranean is formed by mountains. And so it's very, very easy for Mediterranean countries to defend their country because they have these mountains to attack and defend themselves and then hide. It is not the case for Poland. The second thing I would like to say about this map is that I realized, looking at it, how close Poland and France are, in that regard. Very close, because like Poland, France is also a very exposed country. You know, we have historically we have the UK to our north, and we have Germany to our east, and we have open plains. You know, it's very easy to invade France, as history has shown, and it's very difficult to defend this country. Our kings for centuries have had difficulties deciding between priorities. You know, is the priority Spain? Is it Italy? Is it Germany? Is it the United Kingdom? I mean, we've always had trouble, and I think it's kind of the same with Poland. Fertility-wise, demographically-wise, Poland has less population, 40 million. France has 68, and the fertility of Poland is quite low, lower than France, 1.3, where France stands at 2%, in large parts thanks to immigration waves. Poland has a much more strict immigration policy than France. The result is that Poland is demographically is on the decline. The third point is that we are now in the 21st century. We're not in the 19th century or the 18th century, and so the European Union has stabilized European internal threats. We are now out of the zero-sum game we played for centuries. And for Poland, this is obviously essential because it allows Poland to avoid what it faced before. France is the same, which is a multiplicity of fronts. Thanks to the EU, Poland now has just one front to cover, which is the East. And you might say the same for France. France is even more privileged. Some might say that France, even today, has no direct threats. And so this is in large parts thanks to Europe, to the EU, and this is obviously something that we should cherish and that we should preserve as much as possible. So this is the foundations I wanted to set. Many of you, I think, are aware of this, but I just wanted to give you this frame to before we begin on something which is much more complicated. Now, and this will, I think, answer your question, Nicolas. NATO, NATO's eastern flank. So this is a map of NATO from 2022, when Russia decided to attack Ukraine. And so I've been in this business for 20 years, as I said, and this is the point number one that I'm making above, which is that when I began my career, NATO was an expeditionary force, you know, out of area. We were focusing on the Balkans, we were focusing on Afghanistan, which is a beautiful country, but it's it's far away. And for 30 years, we kind of forgot NATO's historical mission, which is territorial defense. And this is the mission of the Cold War that many people in Poland are familiar with. Obviously, over the last 10 years, NATO has gone back to territorial defense. I would say since the attack of Russia on Crimea, we are now back to this. You know, we were dispersed, NATO, dispersed all over the world. 9/11 was the main driver of this dispersion. Obviously, we're now in a totally different era. The second point is that it's a new era, but and it's a regression, but it is not. We should be careful about historical analogies. You know, there are many people trying always, you know, in newspapers and in the media to compare and try to say that that situations are the same or exactly identical. It's not really the same. We're not back in the Cold War. During the Cold War, the USSR had 200 million people, you know, in its bloc. Europe had 300. So there was almost parity on the European continent. Now Russia is at 143 million and Europe is at 500 million inhabitants. So Russia today is not back at the power it had during the Cold War. You know, it is not the same. It is not the same mass. Obviously, this is not integrating here China and the tension between the US and China, but even if you do, you still find the same ratio. It is not 1-to-2. The ratio during the Cold War was 1 USSR for 2 Western countries, basically. Now we're more at 1-to-5, 1-to-10, whatever ratio you look at. That being said, Nicola and Kinga, that being said, the war in Ukraine will, if Russia wins, will improve weights in favor of Moscow. Definitely, in many, many ways, and we're going to study this. Russia is now has a strong conventional army, a strong army that it did not have before the war in Ukraine. It will implement hybrid attacks on Europe's east to force the east of Europe to oil, gas, and trade compromises, definitely. And it will be, in a couple of years, it might be in a position to do so if it integrates Ukraine. We will discuss the impact of that in the next slide. And so right now, looking at the map now, focusing on the map, we have this situation. As you can see, NATO has increased its deterrence posture in the east, all over the east, Baltics, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria, with a special focus on Poland. Poland is the most important recipient of Allied troops, 10,000. Obviously, these numbers are not exact. I mean, they are 2 years old, and Poland's strategy, defense strategy, obviously is closely aligned on that Allied presence. We may talk about this later on. The next slide is about what might happen in the future, what Poland may expect in terms of threats from Russia. I see several. I mean, this is not a comprehensive list, obviously. The first one is these infamous military exercises called Zapad. I don't know if anyone in this call is familiar with Zapad. If you have heard about this before. So this is by the way, a map from the Warsaw Institute. It's important to quote the people that have made the visuals. So Zapad is a drill that Russia does almost every year. I mean, I monitored a couple myself when I was working at NATO. I mean, for many decades, it was not worrying that much. I mean, NATO is also doing almost every year several exercises, several defensive drills, and Russia is doing its own, and for decades there was no real issue there. But in the future, that will be a problem, because Russia will use these exercises to threaten the security of neighboring countries, and will select vulnerable moments in the east of Europe to conduct these exercises. For example, I don't know, it can be a cultural event, or it can be a touristic season, for example, or it can be something that has economic impact. Or let's imagine organizing the Olympics, for example, something like this. Russia will be tempted to, for weeks and weeks and weeks, keep an important force present along the border, saying, "Oh, it's just a Zapad exercise. Don't worry. It's just a drill like we do." And obviously, this will not be perceived as a drill by the Baltics or by Romania, by Poland, by Finland. It will be perceived as a potential attack, because it will mass hundreds of thousands of troops, and the same force that attacked Ukraine. So obviously, during these drills, once Ukraine is over, which right now is not the case, but if Ukraine is beaten by Russia, you will see these drills, and they will be threatening. So this is the number one thing. Number two, Russia will probably play with food market prices, because if they absorb Ukraine, they will control a large portion of wheat exports, sunflower oil exports, and maize exports. So in addition to having a strong oil and gas clout, they will have also a strong influence in food prices. And it will be very difficult for Europeans to control for inflation in that regard. So this is a leverage that Russia will have if they win in Ukraine, an additional leverage. Number three, it's of course sabotage and special forces, indirect attacks, as we say NATO, below threshold operations, I do not believe myself that Russia will attack directly like they did in Ukraine. I think they have learned a lesson, and I think their doctrine, Russia's military doctrine, favors indirect action, and nothing direct like we see in Ukraine. So I think they will probably revert to these indirect actions, and they have skills, a lot of skills for that, and they will use sabotage, special forces, coordinate with Russian-speaking minorities, especially in the Baltics, but also with political supporters across Europe. Despite having attacked another country, Russia still has many supporters. As strange as it sounds, it still has a significant amount of supporters in Europe. It will use them. And fourth, cyber and information attacks on persons and on organizations. This has already started, and it will continue. So these, in my view, these are the four ways. If Ukraine collapses, which I hope will not be the case, but it is something that may happen in the coming years. This is what is next for us. This is our life after Ukraine is beaten, if Ukraine is beaten, which is why we have a strong interest in Ukraine winning this. Otherwise, this is what is next. I wanted to share also this slide, which is on Poland's army this time itself, trying to compare Poland's army and Poland's defense effort with the rest of Europe. So my first paragraph is to say something very important, and this is the most important message I would like to share with you today, which is that Poland is the only European country taking land forces seriously. It is the #1 country in Europe with land forces, especially since the reform that you did, I think, 10 years ago, of bolstering territorial defense forces. Forces trained for conventional and guerrilla operations, 50,000 troops. That effort makes you the #1 land army in Europe right now, and you can see that. You can see that if you look at the graph, the proportion of budget for land, navy, and air. So if you look on the left, these are data I think I gathered from the UN. You see that more than 50% of Poland's budget, military budget, goes for land forces. And it's very, very much different from my country, for example, France, where you find 28% for land, 36% for navy, and 36% for air. You can see that in the east of Europe, not just Poland, because of Russia and because of the open plains that you have, well, you need to have a strong land component, which you have, unlike the West and unlike the north of Europe. So this is my first point to you. The second is that Poland, over the past 20 years, has not just focused on land forces. You also have invested in other domains. With air forces, you have purchased F-16s, cruise missiles, and also F-35 fighters, and also multi-role actually helicopters. Navy-wise, you have equipped yourself with, notably with submarines, equipped with ballistic missiles. You also have purchased recently artillery rocket systems and air defense Patriots. And so you have done an effort to balance your force model over the past 10, 15 years. I know that there's been a lot of infighting, political infighting over this in your country between PO and and peace. But eventually, when you look at the result of these what these two parties have done, you and coalitions, to be more precise, you end up with a more comprehensive force, but with a very, very strong land component. The third point I would like to mention is that Poland has a very, very autonomous and self-sustaining industrial military industrial market. So you have a lot of how can I say that? You have a very strong industrial base, and so you get your equipment, a lot of your equipment from these factories and from these from your own companies. But when you do purchase abroad, when you do what we call foreign military purchases, you usually choose American and not European. This is what when you choose helicopters. I mean, not helicopters actually, because helicopters are from Leonardo, so which is an Italian company. But aside from helicopters, you chose Americans. the F-16s, the F-35s, the artillery systems, HIMARS, and the Patriots. All of that is American technology. And obviously, you did that because you expect America to protect you in case of an attack, and you build a lot of hopes on that assumption. And a lot of your diplomatic efforts are driven by that bilateral relationship with America. Finally, on this slide, you are a very good defense investor, which is at 33% of your overall military budget, which is way above the 20% benchmark set by Brussels. Defense investment means research and development and procurement of defense equipment, so of new defense equipment. You are a very, very good student in that regard. And when you look at almost every defense comparison, Poland is always in the top 5 in Europe. And that is also true for defense investments. We'll move on now to the next slide, unless there is any question, because I'm talking a bit too much. I feel it doesn't seem to be the case. I will now move on. Up. Yeah, very busy slide. Sorry about that. Way too much information. Can you see it clearly, Nicolas? Yeah. The Ukraine matrix.
Yes.
Okay. Well, many things to say about this matrix. I would like to focus just on Poland. Otherwise we're going to spend hours. So we should all focus on the blue rectangle where you see Poland. So you have here 8 or 9 lines, columns. The first one being a percentage of GDP for the military. And here you can see that Poland is at 2.4 in 2022. One of Europe's best students, if not Europe's best, I think only surpassed by Lithuania. I think Poland is number 2 in Europe for percentage of spendings for the military as a percentage of GDP. When you look also, sorry, at the evolution between 2010 and 2022, you can see that Poland has doubled its defense budget, multiplied by 2, 97%, plus 97%. Again, one of the best students in Europe, as you can see, in many countries, especially in Europe's north and west, countries have not done such a comparative effort. In the UK, for example, you actually have -1% in terms of evolution, -3% in Ireland, and in Austria it's just +7%. And so you can tell that Austria has not really changed. When you see that, you can tell that countries such as Austria have not really changed their defense posture since Russia became aggressive in Ukraine. It is obviously not the case in the East, where you see a lot of blue, except I think Slovenia. But apart from Slovenia, most Eastern European countries are between +30% or +400% from 2010 to now. Now, moving on to Ukraine and trying to understand Poland's posture with regards to Ukraine, you can see that Poland is again adjusted to GDP, one of Europe's biggest supporter of Ukraine. 0.7% of your GDP goes to Ukraine, which is huge. It's one of the most important percentage in Europe. You can see that, for example, in the south of Europe, where it's very much red, you do not find the same ratios. For example, in Greece, the support of Ukraine is 0.0995% of GDP. So Poland is much more serious about its support, and you can even say it is double the support of America. Adjusted to GDP. America is at 0.3% of its GDP for Ukraine. But now when you look at the population, you know, what the Polish population says, you can tell that what the Polish government is giving is correlated with the perception of the population. The population, you know, Poland's population feels that the war is a threat. 90% say it's a threat to my country. And 85% of Polish say that they want more military support for Ukraine. That being said, 70% of Poles, and this is a weakness that the Russians are playing on, 70% of Poles say that the war in Ukraine has a negative economic impact on the life of their family. 70%, it's a very high figure, one of the highest. And so this is obviously something that far-right parties all around Europe are playing with, and they will play on this for the European elections. Definitely, you can see that some countries are very much exposed to that narrative, especially in the south of Europe, in Cyprus, Greece, Portugal. You know, there you find very strong majorities of people saying that as well. In terms of weak signals, what is interesting is that Poland is also mostly in the blue here, because you have a strong manufacturing base. You have also a strong engineering culture, and so I think that enables you to ramp up your defense industries much more than other European countries. Look at the UK, for example. In the UK, you only find 10%, even less, 9% of students who are engineers, who are trained as engineers, 9%. And in terms of GDP in the UK, only 8% of UK's GDP is now made of industrial outputs, 8% versus 17% in Poland. That tells you a lot about Poland, about your culture, and your ability to respond to the challenge posed by Russia. But you have a weakness, like all countries. France also has weaknesses, you know. Yours is your reliance on America's commitment to Europe. All your political parties are aligned on this and agree that you know, the most important thing for Poland's diplomacy and defense is America. The problem is that it takes two to tango, and increasingly America does not want to tango with you and with us Europeans. The first graph, look at the graph on above on the top left. It shows you the presence of America overseas military personnel since 1950. And Europe is in blue. And you can see that as of I think it was 2008, as of 2008, Americans have dispatched more military personnel in Asia. So I think Asia is in orange. Yeah, orange. So as of 2008, you have more military staff in Asia than in Europe. And this is calculations I've done myself below. When you look at Pentagon data, it shows that since the war in Ukraine, America has increased its presence in Europe, but not as much as it had before in the 90s. Basically, America went from 300,000 troops in the 1990s, 300,000 to 100,000 today. These are the raw numbers. This is not, ideology or subjective. These are factual numbers. 300,000 and now 100,000. In terms of proportion, as you can see, but the graph is a bit, I don't know if you can see it well, but basically at the end of the Cold War, 60% of America's overseas forces were in Europe, 60%. And this is what you see in the graph below. With the war in the Middle East and Afghanistan, that number fell at 20%. And now we are back basically at almost 40%. So 40% of America's overseas commitment is personnel or in Europe. But it's not what it was before. It is not what it was during the Cold War. America did not send troops as much as it did during the Cold War. It just did not. Why? I think one of the reasons can be found in the graph that you can see on the right, which I take from the Brookings Institute and from 2023. Very interesting study on America's future ethnic profile from 2030 to 2060. And you can see, so this is a high migration scenario. You can see that as of 2050, America's white population will not be a majority anymore, with this white population with European descent, notably from Poland. They will not be a majority. They will have to compose, and already they have to compose actually, to compose with Latinos, which will be soon 26%, or around basically a quarter. They will have to compose with Asians, 10%, Blacks, African Americans, 13%, and other, what they call other races, which is basically Muslims. Most of them are Muslims, and Jews. Jews are basically 2% of America. So that new ethnic composition will have an impact on America's diplomacy and defense posture, because these minorities will take America's budgets and military personnel in directions which they feel at ease with. So Latinos will obviously want to focus on South America because they speak Spanish, because it's easy for them to go there, trade there, and because they have their families there, their roots. So they will want to obviously bring America's focus to Latin America. Asians are going to do the same with Asia. African Americans are going to do the same with Africa. And Donald Trump is, I think, no genius. It's just someone that has looked at that and thought, okay, there is an opportunity. There is a business opportunity for me. And when you look at his speeches today and his communication, it is completely driven by this graph. And Democrats and Republicans know this. They know that this is the future. We have to be aware of this because this is affecting us tremendously. I don't think that America is going to leave Europe for good. I'm just saying that America's focus will continue to be reduced for Europe. And today it is, as you can see, 40%. It will not continue. It will not stay at 40%. It will be much less. So we have to think of strategies, adaptation strategies, to keep America in, while being aware of the fact that America is changing, and it's no longer European. Summing up, this is my last slide. Again, a graph. I'm sorry, with a lot of numbers. I am incorrigible, as we say in French. So Poland is one of the only serious defense players in Europe, because you have not decreased your defense spendings at the end of the Cold War. And so you have a very convincing defense presence in east of Europe today. I would even say a deterring presence. Number two, there is a debate in Poland over the assumption that we discussed. Will America defend your country when need be? How strong will that support be? Very difficult to say right now. Most Poles recognize Russia as a threat. Most Poles want more European defense. This is what you see actually in the figure on the left. 92% of Poles want more European defense cooperation. And so that tells you a lot about the fact that Poland as a society is not just driven by America. It's not just looking at America for solutions. I think your country is also more and more looking at Brussels, at Europe for solutions, for defense solutions. But especially because America is now more and more volatile as an actor. And so America is more and more difficult to integrate in defense equations. Let's be honest. It's very difficult to factor America's support in national equations, and it will be increasingly like that. All that being said, and this is my last point before we open the floor, last but not least, your military situation is much better today than at any historical point. Poland is part of the EU, it is part of NATO, it has only one flank under threat. The enemy is weaker than what it was 70 years ago. That being said, there is a strong need for vigilance and deterrence in coordination with European allies. That is my brief for you. I try to focus on Poland, as you can see. Again, if you want to follow OPY, you can follow us on LinkedIn, especially. This is where we post our latest op-eds or jobs or anything we do. Thank you again, Nicolas, for this opportunity. You want me to keep the slides open, or shall I push the slides away?
It's up to you. It's up to you. I think you can put it away, but as you want.
I just put it away.
Now, first of all, let me thank you for this very large overview with different elements concerning not only Poland, but as well other partners within the alliance. I open the floor for questions. So please, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, you can write the question on the chat. You can raise your hand. You can switch on your camera and move your hand in front of the camera. Please make a sign, and I can give you the possibility to ask a question to Michael. Is anyone volunteering having a first question?
Always the most difficult one.
So I will begin just to give a little bit of energy to other people for the next questions. I will begin with a very naive question. Do you think that the Polish army would be able to be quite strong opponent to a Russian army in a case of a war? Because I think this is the main point of this comparison. It is the operationality of this organization.
Well, I mean, you said that NATO was decentralized, and I don't know if it is the right term. NATO is a military organization, and so it is very much vertical. It's about obeying orders. You know, it's the chain of command. And so yes, you have different units, different NATO units here and there. You have tactical units, then you have operational units, and then you have strategic units. But all of that is very well oiled and responds to a chain of command, which itself responds to political leaders. So all of that now, after 80 years, 75 years actually, we're going to celebrate NATO's 75th birthday. All of that is well known and set. You can say that NATO has now come of age, as we say in English. That being said, yes, I mean it's now under threat again. I think, as I told you, I think NATO can easily push back Russia in terms of mass. We have all numbers show that we are bigger than them by a ratio not just 1 to 2, but 1 to 5. Number of troops, number of missiles, number of tanks, number of fighter planes. I mean, Russia would be crushed. But this is without integrating nuclear weapons, obviously. And this is also, and also you might hear people rightfully saying mass is important, but you also need conviction, drive. And right now, Russia has the drive. You know, Napoleon was never superior in terms of mass on the battlefield. You know, the French were always at a 1 to 1 to 5 ratio, even 1 to 2 ratio in certain battles, for example, Austerlitz, but also battles like Friedland, which are in the north of Poland. You know, Napoleon arrived on the battlefield without superiority of troops, but he had a concept. He had the right concept in mind, and he beat the Russians or the Prussians because he had the right approach to war. And the same thing goes for Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler in the beginning, in 39, 40, did not have superiority of troops. You know, we were bigger than him. When you put together UK, France, Poland, Czech Republic, America, we were bigger than this guy. But he beat us all one by one because he understood what was important during World War II, which is the liaison between Air Force and land forces. You know, he got this before the rest of us. And so it was impossible to beat him. Fortunately, we caught up and beat this man in 44, 48, 45 because of a superiority of mass. And also because we caught up in terms of concept and doctrine. But and that leads me to my last point. This is the thing with Russia today. Russia today, I believe, has not a superiority of troops, of mass, but it has a superiority of concept. It does have that because it has done a huge reform of its military thinking over the past 20 years. And so it is now very good at conventional warfare, thanks to Ukraine. And it is also very good at hybrid warfare because they have been thinking about this for 20 years. And that makes them, I think, a very significant enemy because they have gone out of this communist thinking. So they have pushed that away. All this Stalingrad, you know, this obsession with Stalingrad and obsession with Marxism, you know, all of that is now gone. They're much more pragmatic in their approach, and I think they're going to use that in the battles ahead. So No, they're going to be a serious enemy, definitely.
Thank you for this comment, Michael. When I was speaking about decentralization, I was not thinking about the organization of the integrated commandment, but the capacity of a state to be engaged more or less in a military action. But let's pass to other questions. Since that moment, we had many questions. The ones that are written are very interesting, very good. According to me, the order was this one. And I propose, because there is a lot of questions, that maybe we could take questions 2 by 2. Maybe we could ask for 2 questions. Michał Kivior was writing his first question that was a little bit similar to mine, but only partly. And Marta Wójcik, I think, had the second move. Michał Kivior, if you are here, do you want to ask the question directly?
Sure, I can. So the question would you think that Poland would be able to defend itself from Russia by yourself? Let's say in the worst scenario that NATO is not able to help in any sort of way, or in real case, yeah.
Thank you,
So
Michel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michel. Yeah, you want to?
Do you want to
Nicolas?
react now, or you wait for a second question, Michael?
No, I can react to now. It's an interesting question. As I said in the question before, Michel, the difference between World War II and now is that we have Europe, so we have this European organization, European unity, and so you will not have to fight Russia alone, like you did before. So you have European allies now standing next to you. So, and this support will take the form of troops. But it can also take the form of supplies, military supplies, military assets, etc., etc. So you will not fight Russia alone. And and even last week, actually, we did an exercise to bolster Polish defenses against Russia. And during that exercise, you had 15 European nations plus America. So you have plans. You have I cannot discuss this. On Zoom, but you have plans, defense plans in place at NATO, also in the Polish staff, army staff. And so, whether the Suwalki Gap or attacking in other places, the Polish defenses are ready, and they will be supported by European forces and I hope also by NATO forces. So this is not what Poland was a couple of decades ago, which was alone. Your country is not alone anymore. You have another question, Nicola?
Yes, there are many other questions. Marta Wójcik.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was incredibly interesting. And my question relates to, with this whole conversation we're having, we assume that Russia will continue its geopolitical direction and course as it is now. And I'm wondering, because I guess we all know that it's not Putin's alone perspective, and it's Russia as a whole, and the ideology and the imperialism and so on. But my question is, what do you think should change, or is it impossible for anything to change in Russia's perspective for our position to change as Poland, but as the EU, seeing Russia as a threat? Is it something that can change, and what would have to change in Russia for that to be possible? Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. I'm not a Russia. I've never been to Russia, so and I don't speak Russian, so I have to be quite open here. So this is what I'm going to say is just 20 years of reading about Russia, and so I've read many books. But I would not consider what I'm about to say as being the number one opinion. But I think Russia will probably try to force us to a deal, and they will pressure us, whether Putin or not Putin. You know, they will continue to apply pressure on Europe. And so in order to force us to sign again these oil and gas deals, better also trade deals, because this is what this is about, you know, for them. It is about being part, having a better customs deal with the EU, because people forget this, but the EU is a tremendous economic power and customs trade power. You know, we are the number one trade player in the world, number one before America. And so we dictate terms, we dictate trade terms all over the Mediterranean. We dictate terms to Russia also, because, you know, they don't have our size. You know, we are a 500 million people market, middle class market, you know, and they're just a small, you know, a small 140 million lower level economic market. So they obviously want to apply military pressure and also change our political landscape, you know, have more far right parties in order to negotiate something with us. So for them, from their perspective, this is the this is the strategy. I don't think the strategy is to invade. They don't need to invade, actually, to destabilize us. You know, they don't need to. They just need to destabilize our economies, the Baltics, but also Poland's economy at key moments. You know, reduce the confidence of investors, you know, in Eastern Europe, Baltics, Poland, Romania, Finland. They just have to do that to force us to change our attitudes and to deal with them. And that might work at some point. You know, at some point, European populations might be tired, and they might say, "Okay, you know, let's give them what they want." And obviously, this is what far-right parties in the next 10 years, 20 years are going to say. You know, we don't need to fight Russia. We have more important things to do in the Middle East, for example, or we have more important things to do at home. And so this is, I guess, all of us who will have to, in the next decades, we will have to make a decision about this. You know, what do we do with Russia? You know, do we accept them? Do we accept this bully? You know, this criminal bully, or not? This is something that that future election cycle will decide. Yeah, that is my answer to you, Marta. I mean, I could say more, but this is what comes to mind right now.
Thank you very much.
I think now the order of the question is the order of the chat. Anna Sirbu was the next one. Anna, if you are here, do you want to ask directly the question?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm in the library, so I can't be too loud.
Oh,
nice
you
dog.
cannot...
Very nice dog, Anna.
Yeah, but you are in the library.
In which way?
Maybe...
So she said, in which way do you think, Anna says, in which way do you think the trend of support of Ukraine is moving? Is everyone getting tired of the war?
Michael, you switched on.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. So I'm looking at Anna's question. In which way do you think the trend is moving in support of Ukraine? I think it's going a bit down, a little bit down, especially in the West, but not just in the West. In America, it is going down a bit. In France, it is going down. In the UK, it is going down. But you still have a majority. You know, you still have a strong majority in support of Ukraine. The problem is the minority, which wants to give up on Ukraine, is extremely vocal as usual. You know, they're very much present on social media, Twitter. They are on television. They're invited. And so they have a big echo chamber. But I think you have a silent majority still in favor of support of Ukraine. The thing is, people realize that it's going to be difficult for Ukraine to win, mostly because of demographic reasons. Again, Russia can last this effort for 5 years. Ukraine can last for 2. And so if Russia is able to support the military pressure, it appears that it is able to do so. But if Russia is able to continue to absorb all the death, all the wounded, all the destruction of military assets, if it does, in 2 years, Ukraine will not be able to fight anymore, because there won't be any personnel to carry the weapons, you know. So you can send as much weapons as you want. If there is no one to carry the weapons, the war is over. So I think everybody knows that more or less consciously. And now we have to wait this out. Ukraine still has 2 years to go with a second mobilization wave coming in with new fresh troops. And this will give some recuperation time for the soldiers who have survived. There are not a lot of them, you know, most of them have died. Most of Ukraine's infantry, most of the first wave is either dead or wounded. And so now that you have the second wave of Ukrainians going in what they call over there line 0, so the front lines. And we will see what they are able to do. What I'm very happy about is that Ukraine is moving from an offensive strategy to a defensive strategy. Finally, I've been asking myself for that for 1 year. I've been talking about this since May of last year. Finally, they're doing it now. A bit too late in my view, but and so I think we will see. I think it will be successful in the short and medium term. You know, Russia is not a very good army. But I think many people in Europe realize that, and they have a sense. You know, defeat is, you know, when you, it's like everything in life. You know, and when you succeed in life as in war, everybody applauds you, likes you, and wants to be with you, and because, you know, victory is fantastic. You know, when you're a successful person or a successful military, you know, you have you know, everybody calling you and saying you're the best. And when you lean towards defeat, it's a different story. You know, people tend to start to be negative, the blame game you know, begins, and it's a different mood, it's a different atmosphere. Unfortunately, this is what we have now. I think we have to stay resilient and strong, and and at the same time we have to be wary of what is going on the field, and listen to what Ukrainians are saying, because eventually they will tell us what they want to do, how long they want this to last. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have many other questions. I see 6 other questions already. Emir Takan, do you want to ask directly a question? If not, we can read it. What do you think about Emmanuel Macron wanting to send NATO soldiers to Ukraine? Do you think there is a possibility that something like that could happen?
It's a great question, and it's exactly following perfectly the last one. So congrats, Nicolas, for having picked this one. Well, I think President Macron said that in view of what I just discussed before. Given the personnel ratio on the front right now, and the ability of Russia to regenerate forces much more than Ukraine, given this essential parameter, President Macron said we need to insert doubt in Russia's mind that they will not win, and the only way to do that is to say that European troops are going to arrive. President Macron it's de facto right, because at this rhythm, at the current rhythm of what we call attrition in military terms, so number of killed and wounded, at today's rhythm, as I just said, Ukraine can last maximum 2 years, and Russia can last 5, 6. So everybody knows that. The Russians know it, the Ukrainians know it, and so to change that equation and to disturb that forecast, that everybody's making right now, Macron is saying, well, the only way to actually challenge this and to create a doubt in Moscow is to say that we're going to bring troops to Ukraine. It is, I think, a correct assessment of the French president. The question is how do you send troops, and is it a good idea for us as Europeans? So first on the how, so you have, obviously it's Europeans will not be on the front line. They will be as backup. So they will enable Ukrainians to be closer, get closer to the front. And so Europeans will take over tasks, probably, let's say 30 kilometers far out, out of the line, away from the line, to enable Ukrainian troops to concentrate on the first line. And so this is logistics. We're talking about medical support. We're talking about demining operations. We're talking about development projects, repairing bridges, what we call military engineering. This is what a European force may do. It will not fight, it will not, this European force will not send artillery shells at Russia. It will not, shoot with weapons at Russian soldiers. It will be in the back, basically, which will be psychologically a massive push for Ukrainians. I mean, it's psychologically, but also tactically. This is going to be tremendous if this happens. And so the question is, and this is my last point to you. Is it a good idea for Europeans? It's difficult to say. Frankly, I do not know yet myself, so I cannot really answer this now. I'd like to wait a few more weeks before I give my answer on this. But it is definitely two different course of action. You have one course of action, which is we have to consider Europe in its current borders and defend this border, which is already very, very long, and we have to focus on this, on the terrain that we know. And if Ukraine collapses, we will support a guerrilla, because there will obviously be guerrilla operations in Ukraine if Russia wins, So Europe in that scenario would be basically defending the European line of today and supporting Ukrainian guerrilla actions. So this is scenario one. Scenario two is to consider that it's better to intervene with troops now because the border is going to be difficult to manage, because Russia is going to be right next to numerous European countries, Romania, Slovakia, etc. So this is actually going to be more expensive for Europe to protect this border. So we have more interest in actually sending troops to Ukraine to make sure it does not collapse, because this is less expensive. Defense operations after Ukraine collapses, if Ukraine collapses, are too costly. And we don't want a guerrilla movement to occur in Ukraine and in Russia, and we want to keep this under control. And the only way to keep this under control, in terms of cost, also, is to send troops. So you have two different logics there, with pros and cons. It's very difficult to it's very difficult to say which one to pick.
Thank you. I see here two more very interesting questions. One from Jakob Voss. Jakob Voss is asking if there are any efforts for an EU or pan-European integration of military industry or projects.
Yes, there is. There is, and so Europe is investing more and more. Europe as an EU, you know, as EU institutions, it's doing more and more. You know, 10 years ago, in the EU budget, you only had 0.1% for defense projects. 0.1. So, and now, today, we stand at 0.7. So obviously we're far away from NATO standards, because NATO standards, as you know, is 2% of your budget for the military. We hope, and it's being negotiated right now, we hope to achieve 2%. 2% would mean that we go from 10 billion, basically 10 billion euros over 7 years, to 30 or even 40 billion euros for defense, European defense cooperation projects. This is, I think, this is the way ahead. Probably 30, 40 billion. And in addition, of course, to what is being spent by nations, you know, by European nations. And so yes, so you have more being done in terms of more projects, cooperation projects with planes, drones, helicopters, command and control systems, software, cyber. You see Europe being more and more present. That being said, NATO right now remains the main industrial partner, you know, even in Europe. An organization called NSPA. So NATO remains the #1 integrator for industrial projects, but Europe is increasing its efforts, definitely. Back to you, Nicolas.
Thank you. So maybe I would, before I give, I forgot to propose to Jakob to speak directly, but I would like to complete his question. Do you think there is any chance, in case, I don't know, of strong American isolationism, that we will have a more integrated Europe defense in Europe?
Well, I mean, definitely America's election this year is sadly going to impact everybody's policies. I would hope that we would be less dependent on this, but the fact is that we are. And but you know, whatever happens, you know, whether it is Biden or Trump, you will have a reduced American presence in Europe and for Ukraine and for Europe. You know, Biden is not going to give as much to us and to Ukraine, because Biden, if he's reelected, he will have to compromise with Republicans in the House and in the Senate, and so it will not be. I know. So that people, so that your students understand. America each year is spending $40 billion for European security, and it is spending 20 billion for Ukraine. So right now, the cost for America of Europe is $60 billion per year, which is almost almost 10% of its defense budget. This is huge, and it is not sustainable. Especially because America has many other things to do, border with Mexico, Israel, Taiwan, Japan, and so we will not have, whatever happens this year, whatever happens with the election, we will not have $60 billion to play with in 2025. If we have half of that with Biden, I would be very happy. But this is this is not going to last.
And finally, I see here there is only one more question left. Batu Afji. Batu, do you want to ask directly your question?
I'm actually at a cafe right now, and it's a little noisy, so it would be better if you can wait.
So we will try to read. So Batu Afchi is asking about the scenario if Ukraine is beaten by Russia, and Russia will control an important part of wealth and maize production. And here's the question is, if I understand well, if we think it's possible that Russia will control so many parts of the Ukrainian territory, and or it would be satisfied by some of them.
No, thanks a lot for this question in the chat. Batu. Yes, I think Russia wants the whole of Ukraine, and when you look at Putin's war aims, it says denazification. That means the whole of Ukraine. This is the translation. Why? Because nationalism in Ukraine is mostly located in the east of the country, close to Lviv. This is where you find the strongest nationalist outposts. And so when Putin says denazification, obviously that means that his efforts will push all the way to the east of Ukraine. And to control yes, definitely the fields, all the fields that they have. Will he be able to? Will Russia be able to? That is another matter. I think you will have a lot of guerrilla movements, in all over Ukraine. So it will be time consuming for Russia to, and it will take them many years to have that in control. Which is why I think that they will be stuck with Ukraine. If they win, they will be stuck with Ukraine at least until 2030. They will not be able to switch from beating Ukraine to attacking Latvia, for example, or attacking the Suwalki Gap. No, controlling Ukraine will take them a long time, and they don't have, as I said, they don't have a really good army. But they have a good police apparatus. So I mean, what they will probably do is send their police, send their intelligence forces, intelligence agencies, and do the best they can to gather the harvest and sell it on markets. But it will take them time before they can actually collect everything as they could and export this via Odessa. This is not going to be a smooth ride for Russians. But this is the purpose. This is the aim for them. This is the goal of Putin and probably of his successor.
Okay. So all those topics are very interesting, sometimes a little bit sad, I have to say, but very actual. Do we have, I think we have time for one last question. If there is no last questions, I propose to let you be, Michael, because you are working so hard. You are trying to answer to each question so precisely that you must be probably a little bit tired of all of this. Any chances for, there is the last chance for a last question? No last question, so I'm not using as well my questions, my extra questions. I want to thank you a lot. It was very interesting. Clap, clap, clap. And I hope that we will have again the occasion to see you. One of these days, maybe you will come and speak directly in Warsaw at the university or in a center of research. I know that you are coming sometimes to Warsaw.
I am, and I will come back end of April.
End of April. April. So, thank you so much, and I wish to your Institute for European Institute for Study of War a lot of successes, and we want to read your analysis. So we will read and follow you on Facebook, on
No,
on
LinkedIn,
your
yeah.
web page, I mean, and LinkedIn.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicolas.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for this conversation. All the best to you and to your students.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
And I'm not sure we have only students here, you know, we have always colleagues as well.
Students and colleagues then. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.